They took your name, your land, your language, but not your legacy. Reclaim it at AfricanAncestry.com.
What do you believe is Ibrahim Traoré's represents in the context of African sovereignty, and how does the Sahel states reflect a new chapter in post-colonial leadership?
First of all, Ibrahim Traoré has reignited the spark of the Pan-African vision. We as Rastafari, I want to take time to talk about our elders, our Rastafari elders that inculcated in us as young people the importance of a united and prosperous Africa. And for a long time, it was a lonely journey. Big up all of the UNIA, all of the Pan-African institutions that were holding this flag alive. But for most of the Black world, that Pan-African spirit was waning. Along comes a young, militant, 30-plus-year-old Captain Ibrahim Traoré, coup d'etat in Burkina Faso. The remembrance now of Thomas Sankara arises. A flame is lit on the African continent, and because of social media, this is what we have to emphasize, and the independent media, the narrative that develops is one that rekindles the fire, that Pan-African fire. And there are some key aspects in terms of why I think this is different than what we've seen previously, with the exception of maybe the earliest days of the independence movie as represented by the liberation of Ethiopia in 1941 from Italy, and His Majesty work in terms of the liberation of the 32 states that would become the Organization of African Unity. That liberation process was stymied by the colonialism, and a term that we now call neocolonialism is born, where...
Before you continue forward, because we're here to teach, please give a brief definition of neocolonialism for those unaware.
So neocolonialism is tied to neoliberalism, meaning that essentially it's the ownership of a country by foreign powers, but it's primarily financial, meaning that you have foreign corporations that own all of the national resources, that are funding your military, that are bringing in aid, which brings dependence, which wipes out your agricultural sector, making you dependent on foreign inputs for things that are grown locally. So neocolonialism is the political capture, turning an African state into a vassal. However, we're not doing it with boots on the ground and maybe a foreign military in your country. So we exchanged colonialism, which was, a more physical. We had foreign bases, troops. We were training, and a lot of people don't know, for example, that there were millions of African troops that fought in World War II on behalf of the colonial countries, France in particular. The army that liberated Ethiopia were predominantly Kenyans, Ugandans coming from Britain's Foreign Legion forces. It was black man liberating black man. We hear about the generals, Colonel Wingate and these people, but it was an African army. So when we talk about Ibrahim Traoré now, we see a leader that not only comes to power, but now begins to reclaim that mineral wealth. So it cuts that neocolonialism string that's there, the nationalizing of the gold mines, the nationalizing of the uranium and other rare earth metals that are there in Africa being exploited. These things were revolutionary because now we get to the economic heart of neocolonialism, which is where we failed. Now, what I say about Ibrahim Traoré, and I'm still answering the number one question, we're educating along the way, and we're making sure that we paint the context. What I say is that the same things we're seeing with Ibrahim Traoré, why it's exciting for us as Rastafari people, is that these were the things we saw with a young Rastafari starting in 1916 when he ascended to the throne of Ethiopia as heir to the throne under Empress Zaiditu. You know, when you talk about the economic Ethiopia reclaiming or asserting its power internationally, when you talk about the mechanization of agriculture, when you talk about the importation of the printing press, controlling the narrative, the media, big up I Never Knew TV and all the independent black media that, you know, are part of this revolution, because my central thesis for my interview today is that we're coming into a golden age of Africa and the Pan-African. You understand? I can't come up to I Never Knew TV and just run my mouth. I have to have a thesis. What am I here talking about? We're headed into a golden age, and Ibrahim Traoré is just a symptom of that unfolding, because they suppressed it, but you couldn't keep it down. One of the key things that we knew he was serious is that the formation of the AES, Association of Sahel States, when they created a development bank. So in addition to nationalizing the gold, creating a bank where they could retain value, they can do loans.
Real quick, Farah.
Yes, sir.
For those context, quick definition of nationalization so people understand it.
So when we talk about nationalizing, just means that the government is controlled. The resources are claimed by the government on behalf of the people. So no foreign company. And people have to know that families run the world. This is why we stress family. This is why we stress purpose over that something there. You know, this is why we stress all of these things on our platforms. I Never Knew TV, all of the serious Pan-African channels, we stress family, because families run the world. So these families organize themselves in corporations, and these corporations monopolize or seek to monopolize the earth's resources. So when we're talking about nationalizing, you're talking about governments taking the resources on behalf of the people. This is what neoliberalism fought against, the IMF and the World Bank, coming out of the Second World War, the financial infrastructure that rose up. The thinking was that we would want to stop nationalization and open up these resources for private companies. The theory was that this would lead to more efficiency in the private sector. The problem with that is that the private sector is driven by profit at any means, whereas the government is driven by the national interest. So if there is no profit in modernizing the infrastructure stays as it is. Whereas a country might say, you know what, we need a bullet train. We need this, we need that. It's not going to be profitable immediately, but it's needed. The private sector is not always rapid to do that. The thinking is they will do it because they're keeping competitive. But if you're a monopoly and you buy out the competition and you crush your competitors, then you have no need to modernize. And this is what we see happening in the West, where the infrastructure is falling behind the governments that have a national or a hybrid model in the East. You know what I mean? So when we see what's happening with the Sahel states, usually we get a revolution and then they win the revolution, but then they have to go to IMF and World Bank to get a loan, and that's where the thing popped down.
Back in the same
You're
game.
back in the same thing, political capture, you know, the democracy, we buy both parties and we play them against each other, all of that foolishness. We've seen that time and time again. We're not short of coup d'etats in Africa. Why this Ibrahim Traoré revolution and what's happening in Niger and Mali now sparked this Pan-African flame is that these brothers didn't run to the World Bank or the IMF. They told the Europeans to leave. And now with their resources, which they're now selling direct to the market, they have amassed huge amounts of capital. The price of gold is through the roof right now because of the instability of the global fiat currencies, meaning paper money. Paper money is losing value. Gold, the ancient store of value, comes forward. If we look into antiquity, to Africa's golden ages, if we're talking about the golden age in Ethiopia, we're talking about Shanghai, we're talking about Ghana, ancient Ghana, Mali. We'd see Mansa Musa, who left us so much gold in Kemet, he dropped the value of gold for 2 years. You know what I mean? So much gold let off. So as Africans, gold is our thing. You know what I mean? We're coming forward into a gold age. Right now, as we record this, gold is trading at about 3,500 per ounce. They're saying it's going to go up to as much as 10,000 because of the global instability that is happening right now. Where does that leave the African nations with massive stores of gold? Massive capital. The problem is we used to get that siphon off. It used to go to Canada, it used to go to France. It was financing the Western world. Under the quiet, our mineral resources, and this was uncovered as we took back as they nationalized the resources. They were looking at the books and finding out how much was being siphoned off. They filed court cases, all kind of things are happening that is not reported as widely. But now we're looking at, Ibrahim Traoré didn't buy a Bugatti. He never got Dubai, go have a party, you know what I mean, and start pull off in Dubai.
The man didn't want Burner Boy to do a free concert.
He
They
didn't
want no
even want
distraction
Burner.
for a free concert.
And Burner go sell off, you know.
And he said, "We want no
We
distraction."
are focused on the liberation, you know what I mean? So big up Burner Boy for the thought, but I also overstand Ibrahim Traoré saying right now, let's just stay focused on the mission. They're trying to kill the brother, you know what I mean? So he has to keep his people at a certain frequency. And because of the unification with Niger, I don't want to not stress that enough, Niger and Mali, this provides that unity. And what we see is that other West African states are now leaning in that direction. A major development was Ghana nationalizing its gold resource. This is the ancient Ashanti kingdom, the Asian kingdom of Shanghai, the Gold Coast, they call it, you know. So when you see them, and they just found a new gold reserve that they had not previously uncovered, which I think will help to motivate them. We're getting pennies on the dollar for our resources. If we take it forward, all this that they say we owe in paper money, we can pay that off like nothing because the actual store of value that we have. So in the midst of this golden age, we saw Ibrahim Traoré invest in the mechanization of agriculture, bringing in tractors, not Bugatti, not Ferrari, you know what I mean? Not Cartier, and you know what I mean? He brought in tractors, rice processing machines, and these things. So with that, it takes us as Rastafari forward to, as I say, a young Rastafari who not only imported mechanized agriculture, but established an agricultural college in the multiples to train the agricultural scientists to move us into a modern era. So when we as Rastafari say Haile Selassie set the foundation and they try to erase it, we have been proven right, because look at the impact of someone following that black print or that blueprint, what the impact has. And the rise of Rastafari, we forget, had that impact before social media. There were people in America that were celebrating him. Marcus himself in the early days celebrated the rise of this young prince who was lighting the world on fire. So this is why you're only going to get this narrative on I Never Knew TV, Lion Voice, and Black Independent non-aligned media. And this is why it's so important what is happening with Ibrahim Traoré, what is happening in the Sahel, because yes, it could, it's going to face great opposition, but they're also now making alliance with Russia, some of the major BRICS power, and BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which has risen as a major alternative to the Western former colonial powers. So we're in the era of great power struggle again. The benefit that we have, though, as Africa is a rising consciousness, and the fact that we've been blessed by the Almighty with abundant natural resources. So the fact that these leaders are taking this stance, the fact that other countries and the people are coming together because ultimately the power was always with the people. That is what we have to understand. Haile Selassie overstood this, granting Ethiopia its first constitution and then revising that constitution further to give the right to vote to the Ethiopian people, rising them from peasants into citizens. These are things that we don't talk about. We go with the propaganda against His Majesty that he was a dictator and these things. And what is the thing that they're saying about Ibrahim Traoré? The main criticism, he's a dictator and these kind of things. And as he correctly said, most places don't develop under democracy, because decisions have to be made. Democracies can be manipulated from external forces very easily. Where follow the money, who's doing the funding, So by cutting off that in this stage of uprising, the fact that the resources are being reinvested, the fact that he's investing in infrastructure, importing road building machines. The French constructed 3,500 kilometers of road. Ibrahim Traoré has a plan to construct 5,000 kilometers of road per year. You see? So these are the reasons, objectively, why we are saying that Ibrahim Traoré is important to the wider Pan-African context, because he puts us forward on the track that was started by His Imperial Majesty within the historical timeline, and that was delayed with the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, coup d'etat with Kwame Nkrumah, that whole campaign that was waged against our Pan-African forefathers.